You know what's strange? You can do everything right with money and still feel like you're failing. You're saving, you're budgeting, you're being responsible, but there's this weight in your chest that never really goes away. And honestly, I think we need to talk about that, because if you're feeling it too, you're not broken. You're just human, and the system we're living in wasn't built for humans like us. If this hits home for you, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It helps more people find this video. And honestly, we all need to know we're not alone in this. Let me paint you a picture. You're checking your bank account on a Tuesday morning. You've got money in savings. You paid your bills on time. You didn't overspend last month. Everything looks fine on paper. But instead of feeling proud or relieved, you feel anxious. You scroll through your budget app, double-checking numbers you already know are correct. You think about the future, about unexpected expenses, about whether you're doing enough. And even though you're being responsible, you don't feel safe. You feel stressed. And here's the thing that nobody talks about. That stress doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're redoing everything right in a world that punishes you for not having enough margin for error. Because being responsible with money today doesn't feel like building wealth. It feels like damage control. Most people will tell you that financial stress comes from overspending, from not having a plan, from being careless. And sure, that's true for some people. But what about the rest of us? The ones who are following all the rules and still can't shake the feeling that one bad month could unravel everything. That's a different kind of stress. That's the stress of realizing that being responsible isn't enough anymore. Let me explain what I mean. 50 years ago, being financially responsible meant something different. You got a stable job, you saved a little, you bought a house, you retired with a pension. The system rewarded responsibility. But today, the math has changed, and the emotional experience of money has changed with it. Rent takes up a bigger chunk of your income than it did for your parents. Healthcare costs have exploded. Education is insanely expensive. Wages haven't kept up with inflation. And all of this means that even when you're doing everything right, you're still one emergency away from financial chaos. So when you feel is picking up on the fact that the margin for error is thin, and no amount of budgeting apps or savings challenges can change that underlying reality. Now, before you click away thinking this is just another depressing rant about the economy, stay with me, because understanding why you feel this way is the first step to actually feeling better. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that now. I make videos like this every week, and I promise they're not all doom and gloom. We are going somewhere with this. Here's the psychological piece that most people miss. Your brain is wired to respond to uncertainty with stress. It's a survival mechanism. And money, in our modern world, is one of the biggest sources of uncertainty. Even when you have enough right now, your brain is constantly scanning for future threats. Will you lose your job? Will your car break down? Will your rent go up? Will your kid need braces? Will you get sick and have to pay a massive deductible? These aren't irrational fears. These are legitimate possibilities that most of us face every single day. So, when you're being responsible with money, what you're really doing is trying to create a buffer between you and uncertainty. You're trying to build enough savings to handle the unexpected. You're trying to pay down debt so you're not drowning in interest. You're trying to invest for the future so you're not broke when you're old. And all of that is good. But here's the problem. No matter how much you save, no matter how responsibly you act, you can't eliminate uncertainty. You can only reduce it. And your brain knows that. This is why being responsible with money still feels stressful. Because you're aware of how fragile everything is. You're aware that your safety net is smaller than it should be. You're aware that the system doesn't have your back. And that awareness creates a low-grade anxiety that never fully goes away. Let me give you a real example. Let's say you've managed to save 3 months of expenses in an emergency fund. That's what all the financial experts tell you to do, right? And you should feel proud of that. But instead, you're lying awake at night thinking, what if I lose my job and it takes 6 months to find a new one? What if my car breaks down and I need a new transmission? What if my kid gets sick and I have to take unpaid time off work? Suddenly, 3 months doesn't feel like enough, and the goalpost moves. Now you need 6 months, then 9, then a year. And no matter how much you save, the feeling of not having enough lingers. This is the emotional mismatch I'm talking about. You're doing the right things, But the system has made it so hard to build real security that even when you succeed, you don't feel successful. You feel like you're barely holding on. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Society tells you that if you're stressed about money, it's your fault. You're not disciplined enough. You're not working hard enough. You're not sacrificing enough. And that narrative is incredibly damaging because it makes you feel like a failure even when you're redoing everything you're supposed to do. It puts all the pressure on you as an individual and ignores the fact that the system itself is broken. So let me say this clearly. If you're being responsible with money and you still feel stressed, that is not a personal failure. That is a rational response to an irrational situation. You are not the problem. The problem is that we're reliving in an economy where being responsible is the bare minimum requirement for survival, not the pathway to comfort and security. Alright, now that we've named the problem, let's talk about what actually helps. Because I don't want to just leave you feeling validated but hopeless. I want you to walk away from this video with something that actually makes your life a little bit easier. First, you have to separate financial responsibility from financial safety. They're not the same thing. Being responsible means you're making smart choices with the resources you have. Being safe means you have enough resources to weather the storms that life throws at you. You can be incredibly responsible and still not be safe. And recognizing that difference is huge because it means you can stop blaming yourself for feeling anxious. Your anxiety isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're aware of the gap between where you are and where you need to be. Second, you have to redefine what success looks like. If you're waiting to feel financially secure before you give yourself permission to feel good, you're going to be waiting forever. Because in this economy, true financial security is a luxury most people can't afford. So instead of chasing some impossible standard, celebrate the small wins. You paid your bills on time. That's a win. You didn't go into debt this month. That's a win. You saved $20. That's a win. Progress is still progress, even if it's slow. And here's something I want you to try. Start tracking your financial wins, not just your financial goals. Write down one thing you did right with money every week. It sounds cheesy, but it actually works. Because when you're constantly focused on what you haven't achieved yet, you miss all the things you're already doing well. And over time, that shift in perspective makes a real difference in how you feel. If this is making sense to you, leave a comment and let me know. Seriously, I read every single one, and it helps me know what kind of content to make next. Plus, it's just nice to know we're all figuring this out together. Now, let's talk about the mindset shift that changed everything for me. I used to think that financial stress would go away once I hit a certain number in my savings account. And then I hit that number, and I still felt stressed. So I moved the goalpost. I told myself I'd feel better once I paid off my car. And then I paid it off, and I still felt stressed. And that's when I realized the problem wasn't the number. The problem was that I was expecting money to give me something it can't actually give me. I was expecting it to eliminate uncertainty. And that's impossible. Money can reduce uncertainty. It can give you options. It can buy you time. But it can't make life predictable. Life is unpredictable by nature. Things break. People get sick. Jobs disappear. Relationships end. And no amount of money can stop that from happening. So if you're being responsible with money and waiting for the day when you finally feel completely secure, you're chasing something that doesn't exist. But here's the good news. Once you accept that uncertainty is just part of life, you can stop trying to control everything and start focusing on what actually matters. And what actually matters is this. Are you making choices today that give you more options tomorrow? Are you building a life that feels meaningful, even if it's not perfectly secure? Are you treating yourself with compassion instead of constantly beating yourself up for not being further ahead? Because here's the truth. You can be financially responsible and still spend money on things that make you happy. You can prioritize your mental health over your savings rate. You can take a break from obsessing over your budget and just live your life for a minute. Responsibility doesn't mean deprivation. It doesn't mean you have to suffer now, so you can maybe be comfortable later. It means you're making thoughtful choices that balance your present needs with your future goals. And sometimes, your present needs include rest, joy, and peace of mind. Let me give you a practical example of what this looks like. Let's say you've been stressing about your emergency fund. You know you should have 6 months saved, but you only have 2, and every time you think about it, you feel guilty. So instead of constantly beating yourself up, you make a plan. You decide to save $50 a month toward your emergency fund. It's not a huge amount, but it's something. And then, you give yourself permission to stop obsessing over it. You check in once a month, you adjust if you need to, but you don't let it consume your every waking thought. That's what healthy financial responsibility looks like. It's not about perfection. It's not about hitting some arbitrary goal. It's about doing what you can with what you have, and giving yourself grace for the rest. And here's something else that helps. Talk about money with people you trust. One of the reasons financial stress feels so isolating is because nobody talks about it honestly. We all pretend we have it together. We all post the highlight reel and hide the struggle. But the truth is, most people are stressed about money. Most people are doing their best and still feel like it's not enough. And when you open up about that, you realize you're not alone. You realize that the problem isn't you. The problem is the system. And that realization is incredibly freeing. If you found this video helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because I guarantee you know someone who's feeling the same way you are. And sometimes, just knowing that other people get it makes all the difference. So, where does this leave us? Well, it leaves us with a choice. You can keep beating yourself up for feeling stressed even though you're doing everything right. Or you can accept that financial stress is a normal response to an abnormal situation and start being kinder to yourself. You can keep chasing some impossible standard of financial perfection. Or you can redefine success as making progress, no matter how small. You can keep suffering in silence. Or you can start talking about money honestly and realizing that we're all in this together. Being responsible with money is important, but it's not the same thing as being at peace with money. And if you want to feel less stressed, you have to stop expecting responsibility to solve everything. You have to stop waiting for some magical moment when everything finally feels secure, because that moment isn't coming. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because the world we're living in doesn't allow for that kind of security anymore. So instead of chasing security, chase flexibility. Build a life where you have options. Save when you can, invest when it makes sense, pay down debt if it's weighing on you. But also, live your life. Spend money on things that matter to you. Take care of your mental health, rest when you need to. And most importantly, stop judging yourself for feeling stressed. You're not failing. You're just human. And being human in this economy is hard. I'll leave you with this. Progress beats perfection, every single time. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be debt-free with a year's worth of expenses saved and a diversified investment portfolio. You just have to keep moving forward. One small decision at a time, one responsible choice at a time. And eventually, those choices add up. Maybe not into perfect security, but into something better, into a life where you're doing your best, and that's enough. Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, drop a comment and let me know what you're working on with your money right now. And if you want more videos like this, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you soon.